Welcome to the Let's Go Racing Family podcast, sharing our love for NASCAR, running, and just racing through life.
Hosted by Sebastian, Giovanni, Karen, Tony, and me, Johan.
Each week we'll talk about our view of the world through the lens of racing.
It's coming to the end of the regular season. We started in Daytona, and here we are, almost back in Daytona.
Finishing in Daytona.
Yeah, finishing up. It's been a very interesting season. There's been a lot of surprise wins.
There's been a lot of good races.
Yeah, a lot. Some high moments, some low moments for drivers and teams in general. There's been a lot going on, so just we've got a lot to unfold here. I mean, just thinking about what's happened in the last few weeks, even with the playoff bubble and whatnot, this season's been really interesting. And I think part of that is because of the next gen car. But
and this is the second year that we have that next gen car, right?
Yeah.
That has given everybody kind of an equal playing field.
Yeah.
Which again, I think that's what makes these races so fun and interesting, because there's a lot more competition going on. You don't have your staple drivers up at the top all the time. So it's really exciting. There have been several races that I thought were very fun to watch that probably were not ones that we would consider favorites before.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
Definitely. I mean, even just going back and looking at last season, we had 20 to 21 unique drivers out of 40 that race week in, week out. And this season we've had, I'm trying to think here, 14, 15 individual drivers. I mean, that's pretty impressive, especially considering how NASCAR was for a little bit, prior, before the next gen car, the Gen 6 car.
Yeah.
Right. And even the drivers from last year who were kind of the top drivers, that's kind of shifted a little bit too. Now we have another group of drivers that are up in the top.
Yeah, last season, mainly you saw Chase Elliott running up front, lots of the Hendrick guys, and sometimes the Penske guys as well, and rarely Joe Gibbs, but Joe Gibbs had those good weeks. Now the Hendrick cars, yes, they're still good, but they're more shuffled out lately. Penske they have good weeks, then have bad weeks. But Joe Gibbs has hit a switch, and I think Joe Gibbs is one of the best teams right now.
I think Toyota as a whole has really flipped the switch. I mean, you even go back and look at Jimmy Johnson Legacy Motor Club, how they're switching to Toyota. I mean, clearly there's something going on with Toyota because they've flipped the switch this season. They've become a lot faster. I mean, every single Toyota driver except Ty Gibbs and Bubba Wallace have won this season. But you go ahead and look at where they finished. For Gibbs being a rookie, he's finished really well overall. And Bubba has had some really strong performances and finishes. I mean, even just going back and looking at Watkins Glen, which is a road course, he finished 12th, which, doesn't sound like a lot. But for him, who's a driver who's not very good at road courses or has a really rough history on them, just seeing him doing good like that on those courses, these Toyota drivers, it just shows overall that they've become very strong and very comfortable with this current generation of car.
I would say the Fords are doing especially good. You've got Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney taking trips to victory lane, and then Roush Keselowski Racing. To think about where that team was a couple years ago, where they just had one full-time driver and a part-time car, and they weren't really doing well. Where now Chris Buescher won 2 weeks in a row, and Brad Keselowski has been finishing top 10 and running up there for a potential win over and over again.
Top 5 too. Even those races that Buescher won, it was going to be one of them. And unfortunately, I think in both of them, Brad either got a penalty or had some issue on pit.
I have to say,
but it was those two running 1-2 the entire time, just dominant performances. They were just, that team, RFK has rejuvenated itself, and it's come back to life from what we've seen in past years. And you even go back and look at when it was just Roush, when they had 4 cars at one point, I think even 5, right?
Yeah, 5.
They
five
were
drivers.
A powerhouse team. They were a threat. I mean, you look at the all-time win list, they're ahead of Penske. Yeah. And now with their resurgence, and currently Logano really being the only guy pulling in wins lately, they're kind of passing Penske. And it sucks to say that as a Penske fan, Logano, but it's incredible to see what RFK has done.
Yeah,
and see them going back to back that.
I think this season, really, the best Ford team has to be RFK. I feel like Ford hasn't got that consistency, especially Penske. they haven't got the consistency that, especially last year, they had with Cendric winning the Daytona 500. Yes, Blaney didn't win last season, but he still was consistent. And then Logano had a couple wins in the regular season and was the champion. But this season, really, you go to like last week, Indy Road Course, Logano had a bad weekend, Cendric not too good, Blaney running mid-pack. And then Logano did good, but Cendric and Blaney not running too good. RFK has been running phenomenal. I think they're the best Ford team right now.
So let me jump in here because I do hear everything you guys are saying. There's been a lot of surprising drivers, a lot of surprising teams. We weren't talking about RFK at all. And the fact they have 2 wins, I will say between Buescher and Keselowski, they have 10 top 5s between the 2 of them. What's interesting, though, is that Logano and Blaney, between the 2 of them, actually have 11 top 5s. And I think they've each, Logano has a win.
Logano and Blaney have wins,
and Blaney has a win. So, the other thing that I was thinking about was, like, you think of the Chevrolets, and Hendrick had set such a standard across their teams. The fact that Elliott hasn't even won, and he had won multiple times.
I don't think
Bowman has either.
Bowman's a whole other story.
After his
he hasn't really done good in this season at all. Like, even prior to his injury.
And he's at risk of missing the playoffs. He's like in 20th
like
right
20
now,
something under.
Well, and he only has 4 top 5s.
Well, Bowman actually was doing pretty good before his injury. And then when he came back, no top 10s and top 5s until I think it was Indy Road Course.
So this is the thing, though. Even with Hendrick, if you think about it, like Larson has been kind of quiet, right?
Yeah.
But he's won twice. And actually, if I'm looking at the stats correctly, he has the most top 5s of any driver out there. But I think a lot of that might have came earlier in the season. And lately, he's just not been there. So it's not just a tale of like, I mean, it's a long season. You got 26 regular season races. And those are all points playoff. And then you have the 10 playoffs. So as we've now come close to the playoffs, different teams are starting to take the forefront. And you're starting to see teams like RFK kind of rise to the top. Toyota has been very, very strong throughout the season. You even think of someone like Hamlin. Hamlin has only won twice. But he is second overall in points, and he has 9 top 5s.
He's only, 39 off of Truex going into Daytona? He could very much... I mean, Truex doesn't finish the first stage or even the second one.
And Hamlin gets a bunch of stage points.
We could see Hamlin just snag the title, the regular season title.
And
right
I think the big thing I really want to mention is how Chase Elliott went from being the regular season champion going into Daytona. He's like, nothing to worry about. He had the regular season championship in his hand. To now going into Daytona with the playoff chances on the line. He's in a must-win situation.
So I would say it's been I definitely think you've had different drivers be really good at different parts of the season. And we're at a point now where RFK is starting to rise a little bit more. You have Toyota's been pretty consistently good throughout the season.
We haven't
Chevy's
talked about Richard Childers Racing.
Oh yeah.
Oh my word, yeah.
My man Kyle Busch. Just say,
pulls up to the facility
he's rejuvenated after
he
leaving.
Changed teams.
Joe Gibbs. He's a completely new man.
Yeah. I mean, go and look at him after races or even after like wrecks, and he's just like kind of like it is what it is. Or
I think the biggest thing is that when he has won, he gets cheers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Those boos disappeared. He changed teams, and it's like he's no longer getting booed.
I think Kyle Busch really has just flipped RCR as a whole. Well, besides Austin Dillon, but really, the 8 team. It has been kept being good over and over again. Even with 2 different drivers, last season and this season, 2 seasons with the 8 car, 6 wins. Meanwhile, over Austin Dillon, 2 seasons, only 1 win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Tyler Reddick continues to do well.
Yeah, I would say right now, I would have to say Kyle Busch probably is like my top driver going into the playoffs, and here's the reason why. His 3 wins were on 3 different types of tracks. One was at a super speedway.
Auto Club.
No, well,
Talladega.
Oh, Talladega.
But yes, his first win this season was the race 2, which was Auto Club, which is a more traditional oval.
Intermediate.
And then
Yeah,
Gateway,
intermediate
Gateway,
I
which
just
is
got
a
him
short
confused.
track,
And then he won at Gateway.
which I think is a hard short track to win at because most short tracks are just like you get clean air, it's no passing. Gateway, you can easily pass, and you have to do continuous
Yeah.
restarts. So I think that was pretty good.
Gateway is a really good track, and it's one that I think takes a lot of skill to win on, especially because like the 2 turns are completely different. Like normally on short tracks, the turns on each side are the same. On Gateway, 1 and 2 are small and tight, while 3 and 4 are large and wide, and they're long swinging turns that you can carry a lot more speed. I think he won the pole that weekend and won the race and pretty much dominated it the whole time. And
Yeah.
he's showing even still. I guess he's not in a lack of sponsors, but he's still not. He doesn't have as many sponsors as he does prior. It's not stopping him.
Yeah.
Putting him in a new equipment and a new car and new manufacturer.
Hey,
it's not stopping him.
I'm happy to see Kyle Busch back out there. And I think it's funny, like your mom was saying, like you realize that the guy had gone through a really tough year last year, that now he's getting these cheers. I'm not saying the fans are feeling sorry for him, but it's almost like, all right, there you go. That's the Kyle Busch. He keeps winning, and if he wins a few more races and possibly does well in the playoffs going in the next year, I think those cheers will turn to boos again. But it does show me that people were missing seeing him in victory lane.
Yeah.
So I do think of the Chevys, they haven't been as strong. They're still pretty strong. I mean, you think Hendrick still has a few wins amongst its drivers,
which are questionable, especially with William Byron. I
think
say.
after this weekend, Byron well deserved the win, but most of his races not.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, the guy's got five what you guys
wins,
would
but
call backing into
4.
wins.
Okay, this one, Watkins Glen, he did win, but
yeah, he won
go back
in
to
good
Darlington.
fashion.
Logano, Truex, Chastain, Larson, the 4 main competitors were taken out. And who does that leave you with?
William Byron.
who
He was there he was at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, and so
To
I mean,
win those.
I guess that one's not necessarily backing into it, but he didn't really do much throughout the entire race. Didn't really score too many stage points. And then what else did he win? He won a few other races.
And he won Atlanta.
He won a
which
Well,
was
here,
couple
real
of the
quick,
first
let's go
races.
around the horn. Everybody give your top driver. I think Kyle Busch is probably my top driver.
Yeah, I
so I'm
agree.
gonna steal your guy.
I agree.
Who do you got as your top driver for the regular season so far, going into the playoffs?
I would say Martin Truex Jr.
All right, you can't argue with that. Another guy with he's got 3 wins.
Yeah.
So and he's done really well, and it's hard to.
I mean, there was that post NASCAR made saying that he was the best drivers in the last 5 years. He's been the most consistent and the best. So.
No,
and that's
not
the thing.
last
He is
season.
leading the points. He is leading the points this year. And
He has multiple
he
wins
has multiple wins.
on
Even
Mondays.
with Byron's 5 wins, still if playoffs start today, Truex is the top
regular
car. So
season
he's
champion.
definitely been the most consistent. Who do you as your top driver so far this season?
So we're not allowed to pick multiple. We're not allowed to pick the same.
The same guy? Yeah, you got to pick someone different.
Because I was gonna say Bush, but then I was gonna say Truex, and you took both of them. I'm gonna go with the third guy, Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin really. Beginning of the season, no one talks about him. Gets that win at Kansas. All right, he's got a win. No one really talks about him. The Pocono gets that win, and then Richmond gets he gets second. And then his consistency from that Pocono win has got him all the way up to second in the standings, 39 points. It might seem like a lot of points, but I think in Daytona, he can get that down and possibly be the regular season champion.
He knows his way around that track, that's for sure. I don't think he's won a summer race, though. That's interesting. And he's got the second most top 5s of all the drivers in
But still,
in
3
the Cup
Daytona
right now.
500s.
Yeah. So he's true. You can't argue with Hamlin. I was going to say Truex again, but you can't argue with Hamlin. Gio, all right, those 3 are off the table. Who do you got left?
I'm gonna reach out far for this one, or I guess you guys would consider it reaching far, but I'm gonna go on call it bias or what you want, but I'm just gonna say Joey Logano. Here's why.
He's got 1 win.
He's got 1 win. Yeah.
He's not
Here's
been
the thing.
consistent,
Going into
though.
Daytona last season, you know how many wins he had?
2.
1.
No, he had 2. He won at Darlington and Gateway.
Oh yeah. Well, still, a small amount
He
of
was better
cars.
last season.
Yes, but here's my thing. Even go back to, and you know what happened last season? He only had like 1 or 2 wins last season. And go back to 2018, he only had 1 win going into Daytona to finish off the season or the playoffs. And then you know what happened? And what always happens last season, funnels his way through the 16, 12, and then as soon as it hits the 8, he switches, he becomes really competitive, wins a race, locks himself into the Final Four. Go back to 2018, funnels himself down. A round of 8, locks it in. He won Martinsville, won. Vegas last year, won. Locked himself into the Final Four, and just he gets his win and is aggressive at the beginning. Does what he needs to do to just carefully get himself through, get top 5, top 10s, just get himself through. And then now that we're going into the playoffs, this is where he just plays it smart, and that's why I think Joey's good. And it's not like he's throwing himself into wins like every weekend. He doesn't have as many wins as like your guys. Who'd you say? Hamlin,
And
Truex,
Truex.
and Busch. But he's been consistently good. I mean, even go back and look at, and I know this is just the one race, go back and look at Chicago. On the street course, he was part of the 10 fastest drivers. 2 of those drivers were full-time drivers, but still, Logano was in that group, and he was one of the fastest throughout practice, throughout qualifying, and the race. He was one of the 10 fastest drivers.
He got a top 10.
Yeah, and he did get a top 10. He's been pretty solid overall. We're not going to talk about Indy because that was just a bad weekend for Penske overall. But still, he's been good, and I think he's got what it takes to just keep that same mentality up. I mean, he does it, and he's good on restrictor plates. So, maybe he picks up his second win at Daytona.
All right,
Maybe,
Joey.
but
All
I
right,
don't
Joey,
know.
He's convinced me.
The
It's
champion,
true.
the champion slump
I mean,
trend.
yeah, and then
knows-
look, he
Logano
goes,
he knows
into,
how
he
to
goes into
turn
the
it
Final
on.
Four, and he just does it.
He knows how
you
to
look at
turn the
last year,
switch.
He did it. He,
I don't
he
know.
just
I
destroyed
don't know
everyone.
though.
Also,
hold on, Johan. I will say this.
Statistically, right now, Joey is the because as it's looking, if Joey makes it into the Final Four this year, he is actually, even right now, I'm pretty sure he has the most amount of Final Four appearances out of every driver right now.
Even more than Harvick?
More than Harvick. He has the most amount of
Pretty
Final Four
impressive.
appearances.
Well, look, this is what I will say. He has proven that he knows how to turn that switch. And I think he was the one that said this years ago, that when you get that win, the way that the regular season playoffs are set up, once you lock yourself in, your focus is now, okay, we're in. I just need to concentrate on those last 10 races. I need to, and basically every other race going up to those 10 is about prepping, is about practice, is about getting you ready.
You know what else is important about the beginning of the season and why Joey gets that win early on? Is because the first 10 races in the regular season are not exact, but they kind of mirror the 10 races you're going to get in the playoffs. I mean, look, Phoenix, Darlington, I think is a little bit later, but Atlanta, you get COTA, which is a road course, and we have the Roval in there. So he just kind of has to find his groove in those first races, figure out how he is on these other tracks that are similar again throughout the middle of the season, and then when it's the playoffs, lock in. And
Well,
he's good
he
to
was
go.
Alright.
he was like leading the point standings after his win in Atlanta in the top 10 races.
You convinced me. All right, Karen. Now all those
Trends
great
over
drivers
numbers.
taking off. Who do you got left? Who's your top driver that
Well,
wasn't
I
already
wouldn't say he's my
selected?
top driver, but I think he is a top driver. I think Tyler Reddick, he's very consistent with his driving.
Yeah, I think really is his
How many
team needs
wins
to
does
cut
he
the
have?
mistakes. He only has
Only
one,
one.
One
but
win.
he should have more but his team just needs to stop messing up.
What race did he run the Rocket League car? Michigan?
Michigan and
Michigan,
then his
he was
team,
doing really good, and then his team just decided, yeah, we'll look at a tire that's not even properly on the car and decide it's okay and go to the other side. But aside from that, Mom, you have a good pick.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, he's definitely been up there and in terms of like top 5s and 10s. I'm looking for the stat though of top 5s. He's got 7, which is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, that's more than Blaney. That's more than Bell, who you said was having a great year. That's more than Keselowski and Buescher. They each only have 5. And Reddick has 7 top 5. So that's pretty consistent. You're up in the top 5s. You're competing for wins.
It's crazy. We're talking about all these drivers and the fact that they've had all these races to compete at. Does anyone want to mention any specific races they enjoyed or
Yeah.
any specific
So-
moments?
There are some really good ones.
All right, so what were your top moments from this season so far?
I would say probably Chicago
I was gonna say that one, dude.
Atlanta. And maybe
Wait, all right, you're going to pick multiple. All right, so you say Chicago, Atlanta, and what's the other one?
I think Nashville, but is like not the highest, but I think it was just I think it's a good moment because Ross Chastain won on a normal oval.
Yeah, that was a big win. That was a very big win.
That was
for
a really
Justin.
good race, and it was a night race too.
And he dominated that. It wasn't like you said. He didn't just back into that win, or some crazy tricky thing happened, or he pulled a
It
watermelon
was
wall.
raw speed,
ride.
man.
Yeah, he
Raw
was
speed
fast.
that night.
So those are some big moments. So you're gonna say same thing, Chicago?
Yeah, I was going to say Chicago. And for me personally, Chicago was really big because, I mean, you guys know I've been huge on street courses. I've always loved watching Monaco growing up on the Memorial Day weekend. And as I kind of learned more about racing, when I discovered more about like other street courses, like we have a street course here in Florida, St. Petersburg, which I'd love to go to one day. California's Long Beach, Detroit, Toronto. It's so cool. And then when I heard that NASCAR was going to be doing an actual street course for the first time ever on like the streets of Chicago, that was just incredible to me. And then seeing it actually happen was just like a dream come true. It was amazing. I mean, I remember when I was younger, I would play NASCAR 06 Total Team Control, and one of the fantasy tracks they had was a New York street course, and I would always play that one. And I got pretty good at it, but I was like, man, it would be sick if we could do that one day. And then seeing that come to life, it got me really excited, and I was really happy. And then seeing Shane Van Gisbergen come in and win his first race was awesome. But I think my other moment that was really big, just revolving around NASCAR, was seeing them going to Le Mans. Just seeing the Cup car there, and having the 7-time champion Jimmy Johnson behind the wheel of it was incredible. It was huge leap for the sport.
Yeah.
I mean, you heard the stories of just, I won't go into it too much, but you heard the stories of just like all the fans there that were like constantly getting woken up and surprised by how loud it was, and just seeing the sheer size of that monster compared to the other cars. And just overall, it was a big weekend for NASCAR. It was a big day for them, and just something that really impressed and shocked the world, and show that we're not just turning left on ovals. You know, we got a lot more to showcase with what NASCAR has. So that was a great moment for the sport.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. If I had to pick one, I think that was the biggest weekend. And not just because of what happened on the track, but the fact that NASCAR pulled it off. There was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. You could just tell with the city, and then with the rain, and they had to call it shorter and all that. And then for all of those pressures going against the sport going into that weekend, and then the weather and all of that, and for them to have pulled it off and it be a memorable race, and this racing surface everybody said was awesome. I think like that, yes, that was
You're talking
one
about
of the
Chicago.
Chicago. That was one of the marquee moments of the entire season.
Absolutely.
I have to agree. I mean, my personal one is Daytona, because that's the only race we went to this year, and it was a kickoff of the weekend of the season, the 75th anniversary. So that was kind of cool. But definitely from like a fan standpoint, I'd say Chicago. Yeah.
I think Fontana for me, because that was literally the race right after Daytona. And Kyle should have won Daytona. So seeing him like show up and win Fontana, that just felt really good for me.
Your man was back, and now you knew because he won that race.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, and he was the final winner at that racetrack.
Oh, yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he got to seal his rival off from because Joey Logano can't say he's won at every track like
he's
Kyle
never
Busch,
won at
because he never won at
Fontana.
Fontana, and he won't. So
Mom, what do you think?
Those are, I think, all of those are really good moments of NASCAR this year, and they're great endings. I know there's been a few races where we were just like screaming and just so excited at the end of the races. So, like I said, I think this has been one of the most exciting seasons in a while.
Yeah.
To watch.
awesome.
The top 15 drivers are set, so that means there's room for one more driver. Who do you guys think is taking that spot?
Well, I think it's obvious. It's going to be the number 23 of Bubba Wallace. I just don't see any of the playoff drivers who need wins getting in. They're going to have jitters and butterflies and be nervous because they know win or nothing.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I think Bubba Wallace is my pick to get the 16th spot, because all he needs is for a repeat winner, or he needs to win that race, and he's got the points. So there's definitely a lot of help on his side.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Bubba too. As much as I want to say Suarez, and I would love to see him get in, I think just right now everything that's been going his way, I think it's Bubba right now. I mean, when you're getting advice from the Scott Dixon, like of IndyCar, 6-time and one of the most talented like drivers in that series, when you're getting advice from him and pep talks from him, that's like pretty good stuff. And I think that momentum that helped him in Watkins Glen is going to carry over to Daytona. And I think he's either getting in on points or he may come away with a win. He's good on super speedways, and I mean he won Talladega. He almost won Talladega again this year. So I think it would be cool to go and see him win in Daytona. So yeah, I think Bubba's gonna get that 16th spot.
Yeah, my heart wants to say Suarez. I want him to go in there, win, get in the playoffs, and have a lot of momentum. But my mind tells me you guys are right. I think it could be Bubba Wallace. 1, he's got multiple paths to get in. 2, he's got a teammate. It's already in that has nothing to lose. So he's going to do everything he can get him in there in Tyler Reddick. And 3, his owner is also already in and is also going to want to do anything to get him in. And bottom line, he doesn't even have to win to get in. He just needs to not have any of those guys behind him win. And so that means that it's even less likely because Chase Elliott needs to win. Suarez needs to win. Bowman needs to win. Whereas Wallace can win, or he just finishes where he's at as long as he doesn't get beat by these other guys.
Yeah.
He's fine. And he's got somewhat protection in the form of teammates. So I think it's going to be Wallace. I would be surprised, and it would be a huge story if it's not Wallace going into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Well, the only way wouldn't be Wallace if some random other driver.
Yeah, one of the guys behind him.
No, not behind him.
No, like Corey LaJoie, for
even
example,
if some
comes up and
other
wins.
random driver wins and takes that spot, then Bubba's out.
Yeah.
But I think Bubba will get in on points.
Well, what's the light? No.
I don't think that the other ones behind him will get in or win. It's Daytona. Anything can happen here at this race. So there's a chance they can, wreck out or whatever can happen. But it's Daytona. Based on points, I think Bubba will get in.
Yeah, I'm. My big question though is going in here. I'm just curious how desperate are drivers going to get? Like, how willing is Chase Elliott to potentially like rub himself up against the wall to advance positions, or like bumping guys, or straight up just dumping them out of the way to even take the win? Like, how desperate do you get?
Do you really?
Allmendinger,
Do you
Gibbs,
really
Suarez.
need to ask that question? Just think
Like
of what
all of
happened
them.
in Martinsville
They're gonna get
with
desperate.
a chance to go to the next round. What did our guy in the number 1 do?
He
Slung
rode the
himself
raw.
around the
He
wall.
created the Chastain. What did they call his move?
The Hail
Hail
Melon.
Melon.
The Hail Melon. He created the Hail Melon just to get into the next round. If you're Chase Elliott or you're any of these other drivers and you have a chance to get in the playoffs, you're doing whatever it takes to get to the front. But because it's restrictor, you can't just do it on your own.
It's Daytona,
You gotta
so
get up
you
there.
have to be careful
You
when
gotta
you
be
pull
fast.
moves, because those moves can mean wrecking.
Yeah, and it could come back to haunt you. So, all right, it's going to be an exciting Saturday night in Daytona. I hope this race ends under the lights. And so we'll see. I don't want another rain delay because that means we have to drive back again the next day.
Yeah, I absolutely want it to finish on Saturday.
So, all right, we're excited. The other thing that's kind of exciting for us, we only went to Daytona. Now we're going to Daytona again. And then we get to go to Kansas in 2 weeks to go watch that race. We've got friends that are out there, and we can't wait to hang out with them. And we're going to go to the race with them. They're hooking us up with some passes and tickets. So we're excited about that. So anyway, all right. Well, with that, Giovanni, why don't you take us out?
Yep, this is a pretty fun episode. Thank you for watching. Consider subscribing, following all of our socials. Hopefully we'll be able to putting up some new stuff on there. And Let's Go Racing Family out.